Hi, I'm Steve Lentini, and I'm your host for Different Thinking for Different Times, Season 4, Episode 17. I like to start with a reading every episode. And by the way, I haven't recorded episodes in a little bit because I finished my new book called Sage Advice Wisdom for Living from Throughout the Ages. And I started my next book, which I hope to complete before the end of March, maybe sooner. I've gotten maybe a third of it done already. It's coming to me. It's called In Plain Sight. Learn to see what most people miss and embrace life as it is. So here's a reading to open today's episode from Ernest Holmes, who was the founder of Science of Mind. Our whole practice, he's meaning science of mind, by the way, is based on the concept that God is where we are and what we are, and that there isn't anything else. Our whole concept is partially based on the theory that whatever appears to be wrong is not wrong in itself, but is the wrong arrangement of what is right. There is no dualism in the universe, as I have always said. Ernest goes on to say there is not God and something else. There is no such thing as good or evil in itself. There is only what is, which automatically and mechanically reports from itself or interprets itself to us the way we look at it. Now, that's what I've been talking about in different thinking. When we look at others as wrong or make them wrong, we limit what's possible and we don't allow the proper arrangement of the molecules, of the events, of the manifestation of them. Michael Singer, in his book, The Surrender Experiment, says the universe is not personal, it just is, that everything just is. But you see, we judge things. We make others wrong with our small minded acorn brain thinking. And when Ernest, for example, today says there is only God, I'll go back and read that sentence. Our whole practice is based on the concept that God is where we are and what we are, and that there isn't anything else. That's what I experienced on November 18th, 2002. 1 second in intensive care with two friends at the end of my bed. The next second, I was one with everything and nothing. And there was only what is, there was only the now. God is in the now, the divine, the creator of the universe, the life force, the Higgs boson element that physicists are finding in the super collider experiments in Lucerne. They're finding there's an organizing principle they're calling it Higgs boson, behind that organizes all the particles. Creation itself, the creative force. I was one with everything and nothing, an immediate knowing. But the fascinating thing is, there was none of the small-minded thinking those thoughts that are operating in my brain now that I'm back in my body. It'll be 20 years, November 18th. Those small thoughts came right back as soon as I got back into intensive care. Now, they weren't very active because I was blown away by what I had just witnessed. What's next is what we should call death, not death. I witnessed what's next, and nothing small-minded was there. In fact, the next scene was like a scene and a scene and a scene because there was only the now. I could not string the events together while I was with the infinite. The next scene was a life review, and only the lives I had touched flashed before me. People I had bought sandwiches for, helped to walk across the street, given money to, people I'd helped move, friends, family, all the good I had done. And the next scene was a question, stay or go. And my consciousness, I'm embarrassed to say I was 50, had not surrendered to the moment like it did then. I responded with thy will be done. and I was right back in intensive care. And in that darkest moment came my calling. I've been working to help people overcome small minded thinking wherever they bring it, at work, at home, in politics, everywhere. Our job is to overcome our small-minded thinking and become more like the organizing principle behind everything, the creative energy that keeps expanding. Think of the James Webb Telescope, finding stars being born, suns, planets being shaped around them, solar systems being born within our own galaxy. And there's an infinite number of galaxies in this miracle we live in. You know, I've talked about this before. There have been UFO sightings. With the exception of Brazil, there haven't been sightings of alien beings. 1996, there were 2 alien beings sighted after a crash of a spacecraft that people reported. It was shot down by the Air Force, the United States Air Force, I believe, and that the United States, supposedly, according to the people in Brazil, have the 2 alien bodies. But and they were alive when they were captured, by the way, or at least supposedly. But here's what I'm thinking. We're seeing UFOs, alien spacecraft, but we're not seeing aliens because they're on a search for intelligent life in the galaxy. And they're bypassing Earth. Think about it. We have the hubris and the egoic thinking that says, I'm right, you're wrong. I'm a Democrat, you're a Republican, you're no good. I'm left leaning and progressive, you're a conservative, you're no good. It's crazy thinking, small-minded thinking. Even our leaders are modeling poor behavior, making whole groups of people wrong. And it doesn't matter whether you're on one side or the other. I happen to be an independent because I've witnessed the craziness for years. And I look for people who run that have common sense, that talk about being willing to negotiate with the other side of the aisle, to compromise. But I also think that our political system is no longer serving us, that we need to rethink career politicians. We should have term limits. We should have publicly funded elections, not big money. We should outlaw lobbying. And we should think of political service as service to the government, like the Army or the Peace Corps, and no longer have careers for politicians. People should work and then go maybe 3 weeks a quarter to Congress. Believe me, they don't spend much more than 12 weeks a year in Congress. And if they had only 12 weeks, they'd get more done. But that's up to us to change it. And up for each of us individually to step up our game, to expand our thinking above small-minded thinking. All you got to do is watch either of the political party conventions to look how small-minded people are and blindly following things. Blindly following anything has never gotten humanity anywhere. And you can think of Jim Jones or the sneaker cult, but it isn't just religion. Hitler, Mussolini, other despotic leaders, people followed them blindly. That's how they got into power. And even in this country now, it seems like we want to have one party. But that only works in communist China or North Korea or where there's dictators. Think about where it works. Stifling dissent or people who disagree. How about COVID? Big tech shut down the Great Barrington experiment, which has now been proven that they had a lot of good points to make. They were scientists. Science has never been following one science method or one side of science. Science has always been about going back and forth, rechecking the data, redoing experiments, reconsidering things from all sides of science. But yet during COVID, one group shut the other down. A whole bunch of people are saying, we follow the science. No, they followed one method of science, and they didn't want anyone disagreeing with it. YouTube shut down the message. Google shut down the searches. Facebook shut them down. Twitter shut people down. We have to be willing to get out of a monologue and small-minded thinking and expand into what matches this universe. Limitless, infinite. We are filled with hubris and egoic thinking that says we're right. And when you say you're right, you're making a whole bunch of other people wrong. I say we have to get over ourselves, be willing to have a dialogue with anybody that disagrees with us, especially. Maybe the universe sends you a whole bunch of people that bother you because you're like them. Let's say you think people aren't tolerant, but you dismiss all the people on the other side and you won't have a conversation. You're being mirrored your own lack of tolerance, your intolerance. But you have to consider this for yourself. My journey is my business. Everybody else's journey is none of my business. But I learned that by nearly dying, by flatlining in intensive care. But I had the great gift of coming back. And I think we should all get a peek and come back. But I can't guarantee because a lot of people left today, they're in the infinite, but they're not coming back to this existence. But if we did, we wouldn't be so petty. Just think about it. You have to prove this to yourself that by embracing life as it is, accepting that life is not personal, that nothing's happening to you, it's happening for you. But that's hard to do, especially when life doesn't match your picture, as Michael Singer says. But go on a journey of experimenting. Read Michael Singer's work or listen to his program on Audible. He wrote The Untethered Soul. He wrote The Surrender Experiment. His Audible program is Living the Untethered Life. Fascinating thinking, but it's very much like mirrored by Eckhart Tolle in The Power of Now, or any of his YouTube recordings. You can listen to him. Deepak Chopra echoed many similar things, and many, many others. And I've got a lot of them in my Sage Advice book. But I go back to Lao Tzu and Cicero. For example, Cicero said, politicians aren't born, they're excreted, which I chuckled because it means we haven't learned anything in over 2,000 years. We're still letting an elitist group of people run us instead of us running them. That's how it works. And we should stand up and change the system because it's not working, folks, at least in my opinion. But I'm glad to have that debate with you. Glad to host you on this podcast. Steve at stevelentini.com. Steve at stevelentini.com. Email me. I'll be glad to listen to your views, but we'll have a dialogue. Unless you want to shut me down, then I'll say, does that sound like small-minded thinking? Just consider these thoughts. I hope I'm helping you. Thank you.